Alrighty, hello. Welcome to this week's episode of the Designer's Den. I'm super excited today to have my friend Teos, the master of all knowledge of flumps. I know, on today. So Teos, I don't know that anybody could necessarily be unfamiliar with what you do, but I suppose it's a thing. So do you want to give a short introduction for yourself?
No.
Okay, well,
Yes.
fine.
Thanks for having me on the show. I've been loving this. It's been super fun. You guys are doing great stuff with this channel. It's super cool. What have I done? The thing that makes me the happiest is working on organized play and seeing organized play happen and grow because it brings so many people together. So I'm often doing things, even when I'm not writing an adventure for organized play, I'm sort of doing things behind the scenes like you do. Um, Things that I might be known for, I was lucky enough to help co-write the Acquisitions Incorporated hardcover release by Penny Arcade and Dungeons and Dragons. That was a lot of fun, one of the best projects out there. Recently, I worked on the Hero Quest board game,
Yeah.
which is not out yet, but it's revitalized and coming out soon. It was crowdsourced. I was the $3 million stretch goal, which I told my kids about excitedly.
And I'm
Um,
excited to hear a little bit more about that and how that came to
Yeah,
be.
yeah, I
Wow.
can share a bit about that. I've written for Dwarven Forge. They have two huge adventures that we wrote that are available absolutely for free on their website. I've written some organized play for lots of different editions and campaigns. The most recent ones were the Artifact for the Ravenloft series, and then the Howling Void for the Elemental Princes series. And then I've written some.
Hold up 1 second, Teo. Sorry. I had to switch my output, so we've lost you because technology. Okay, carry on.
All right. Yeah. So convention events like the Cloud Giants Bargain Adventure, which was Acquisitions Incorporated themed, the Confrontation at Candlekeep adventure that was during D&D Next, Vault of the Dracolich, all sorts of good
Yeah,
stuff. I've been lucky.
the list just goes on and on. And fortunately, for anyone super interested in knowing, you keep a pretty detailed list on your website, alphastream.org. So don't worry if you didn't write all of those down while he was saying them. You can go and catch up there. Your website is also white, so that's very bright.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. There is that.
um,
It's brilliant.
yeah, it's hard when I'm on this because I have my OBS is dark, and then if I bring up a website, I look like a ghost.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, organized play is actually so we'll start with that. Organized play is actually how I met you,
Yeah.
and honestly, how I've met almost all of my friends at this point. Gonna be
It's
honest.
a friend maker.
Yeah, it really is, and it's pretty much like the biggest part of my life, and excited to meet people through that. So organized play, you've actually been doing that much longer than fifth edition. You were the administrator even for, or a administrator even
Mm-hmm.
for several campaigns, Living Forgotten Realms,
So
which
I wasn't an admin for it, but I did write for it.
oh, you wrote for that one. I thought you were an admin too. That's clear.
Just a loudmouth.
Yeah, well, yeah. You know, all the important people are. That's the secret. But you were definitely an admin for the Ashes Athos.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is not Forgotten Realms.
No, no, that's Dark Sun.
That's
That was
Dark
pretty
Sun.
sweet.
Yeah.
I always thought admins were these crazy people who somehow gave enormous chunks of their lives to the cause of organized play, and that this was wonderful, but I would never be so foolish as to go down that route. And then I was asked, would you like to lead up this effort? And it was Dark Sun, and Dark Sun's just one of my top campaigns ever. And I was like, oh, yeah, I have to do that. And so I talked to
You
my wife, and
and
we negotiated and did it. Chad Brown, Derek Gooder, the three of us did it for Baldman Games and for Wizards of the Coast. Though there were some other folks that were involved as well, and a lot of writers, and it was lovely. We wrote what ended up being the longest series of Darks and Adventures that has ever existed. And we still send them out. You can actually request them through the website. We have permission from Wizards of the Coast to email them for free.
Oh, well, that is actually pretty cool. I did not know that. So,
Yeah.
for those of you out there then itching to play something that's not Forgotten Realms, you can request some Dark Sun. You might have to do a little conversion if you want to play it in
Right.
5e, but um,
Yep.
it's not super difficult to
No,
convert
it's
stuff. So,
4E, and we have a lot of people, actually, a surprising number of people who will write back and say, yeah, I'm running them in 5E. I'm really enjoying them. And so
mm-hmm.
it's nice to actually hear people still enjoy that work that we did so many years ago during the 4E era. It's great.
Yeah, and of course, you have people out there who are avid fans of Dark Sun. Like I know Robert Aducci springs to mind when I think of Dark Sun, who
Yeah.
help keep that interest going. So I am not at all surprised that people are still kind of clamoring for that content.
Yeah.
Uh,
He wrote one of the adventures. Hmm.
yeah, not surprised by that either. um, yeah, so you have worked on a large number of projects, and a lot of them actually even pretty, I guess, well known, tippity top of the what people would dream of working for Wizards and with all kinds of stuff. So I guess what most people want to know is like, how did you get to where you had the opportunity to work on so many projects with Wizards? Like, I mean, like you said, you kind of co-wrote the
Yeah.
Acquisitions Inc. book, and that was a smash hit. Obviously, not organized play, but
Yeah.
it's so much
I
fun.
wish it was. Um, well,
That
I
would
think there's
that would have
two.
to be its own
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah. Oh, but I would love to like build your franchise and run competing businesses. And can you imagine like some battle interactive with all the businesses coming together? Like it'd be insane.
So yeah, we're having a big flea market, and we got to see who's best.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, so I think there's two ways to answer this. One is, what did I do? And then one is what I would say, what you should do today if you kind of want to
Because
do things
things have
because it's
changed.
different. Yeah. Because I mean, just like Chris Perkins will say, like, oh, he just, sent letters into Dungeon Magazine endlessly. And that worked for him. But I don't know that it super works today, right? And as
Yeah.
much as Wizards says just write on the guild, like there are a lot of people writing good things on the guild,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not all ending up at Wizards, right? And so there's only so many ways to get in. But what I did was get involved in organized play, and I still think it's a viable way to do it
Mm-hmm.
because
Certainly.
organized play is a community, and if you do good work, you can get recognition. So right now they have the Dungeon Craft, I think it's called. No,
Dungeon Craft for the
Dungeon Craft.
Plague of
Yeah.
Ancients Rime of Frostmaiden campaign.
Yeah, and so you can write now adventures for organized play, and there's the Salvage series for Eberron, and you can submit them, and that's a way that you can sort of get noticed. What I did was I would go to conventions back in the third edition era, and I would say, "How can I help?" And some member admin would say, "Oh, why don't you write up a little short encounter we can use at the next convention event or something like that." And that was a way for me to learn. And what I really like about the organized play method is that as you are writing, you're working for people who are more accomplished than you, more experienced. And so they
Mm-hmm.
read your stuff and they go, yeah, let's change this a bit. Or, here's something you can do next time. And so you learn tips as you go. The other thing is being involved in organized play, you're running a lot and playing a lot usually. You're not just submitting, but also doing it. So you're consuming tons and tons of content by some of the best people out there. And then you're running it and you're seeing what works and what doesn't.
And you're running it and writing it for this very wide audience because organized play, like, you know, everyone can play unless you break rule 0, in which case
Yeah.
you can go play with
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Which is don't be a jerk, okay? And for
Yep.
anyone who's not aware. But yeah, so that really does give you, like you said, this broad experience of like, not just like what is my home group like, but like what is, the wider organized play community, right?
Yeah,
So,
and what works, like I love running it, whether it's my own adventure, which is actually fun to run, or someone else's adventure, and you run it for 3 different tables, and you see why did this scene fall flat, or why did it really rock, or why did it work for one group but not another, and you start learning better ways to present the material, and simultaneously you're learning how to write that kind of material. So I think that's one of the most valuable things you can do because you have to develop expertise, right? It's not just getting noticed. You must actually be good. And to be good, you have to work under better people. You have to consume the works of better people, right? When I read an adventure that Will Doyle wrote, I'm better for it, right? Because Will is amazing. Sean Merwin, right? Any of these guys, you read their work, right? Paige Laitman, right? You read something that she wrote and you go, okay, that's cool. I'm going to, use that kind of approach in the
Mm-hmm.
future.
Yeah.
So I did a bunch of organized play stuff, and that's led to more and more adventure work that was for pay. And kind of one of the ways that worked is I just by complete luck, and that's the thing is you must understand that luck exists, and so you have to create opportunities, which is where you can get lucky. So one of them was that I was at a Winter Fantasy convention, and it was my job to run a game for some guy called Chris Perkins.
Oh, no pressure.
Yeah, he just sat down at my table, and I ran him through a Dark Sun adventure. And he seemed to have a very good time. He was a fun player, let other people shine. And then I get an email asking me if I wanted to write an encounter season. And I actually had to say no because I didn't have time because of the Dark Sun campaign. But that was an opportunity that came my way because of just being in the right place, but also running an adventure that I'd written, that I'd had a hand in, that being able to provide that good experience. And over time, other opportunities like that have happened, right? Like writing the Acquisitions Corporate book happened for me because I was very randomly being a table admin at PAX, and up walks Jerry, one of the owners of Penny Arcade, one of the Acquisitions Incorporated stars, and he's like, I've never come to the D&D area. I thought I'd come by. And I'm like, oh, well, my name's Teos, da-da-da. And he says, have you seen Cloud Giant's Bargain? And I'm like, yeah, I wrote it. He's like, you wrote that? It's awesome. And so we just start talking. I mean, just luck, right?
Yeah.
And I had never ran into him at a PAX. I've been to a lot of PAXs. And that year I ran into him 4 times. Like, how absolutely lucky is that? Right?
Though, that actually kind of like lines up with kind of my experience. It's like
Yeah.
one year at Origins, I decided that I wasn't going to play every single slot. I'm going to hang out with my friends, which, that's the organized play community. And so I end up actually spending the majority of the convention hanging out with Dave Christ and like the D&D admins, and therefore Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford. And who else was there that year? Because it was the year they released Tomb of Annihilation. And then after that, everyone's like, oh yeah, we remember her, the girl with the purple hair.
Yeah, I miss your colored hair, by the way.
It was a wig. It's still a wig. I have it. It's upstairs.
I also miss you being a tiefling at all times, but that's okay.
Yeah. I think I'm going to dress up in the tiefling for the next convention upcoming, the online convention, which is, again, Winter Fantasy. Yeah.
It all comes back to Winter
It all
Fantasy.
circles around. Yeah, so, no, I absolutely agree, though. A lot of it is being in the right place at the wrong time, right time.
Right time. Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing is you want to do both things. Sharpen your skills, learn from others about what works, play whatever game you're writing for a ton so you really know it, and then create those opportunities. And hopefully they'll come your way, and you hopefully do well with them and continue working. But, some of it is also doing the legwork. So like Dwarven Forge, I was looking at their Kickstarter. I love their stuff. I buy their stuff.
Oh, good.
Right. And so I'm looking at these awesome terrains, and when they did Dungeon of Doom, their Kickstarter was sort of like a kind of a story. It was all these linked, terrain pieces, these different rooms. And so I was like, I'm just going to reach out to them. So I send them a message through the Kickstarter system, right? A Kickstarter email.
So you send Stefan a message.
Well, actually, it was an entirely different person.
Oh.
I think is still involved with them, but it was sort of like a person who handles
The
things and
Kickstarters,
helps them
yeah.
get stuff done. Yeah. And I just said, I've written a bunch of things in the past. This really feels like a cool adventure. Are you interested at all in turning into a big, cool adventure? And they were like, yes, we are. And so we talked, and I started working with Nate. And then, I ended up writing this really big piece, and then another, and, and on it goes. So.
Yeah. And like, I think the I don't want to say the most important thing that I'm getting from that is like to put yourself out there in the community, like whether that's like the actual like being at the conventions, which obviously like a lot of people don't have the funds to go and do that, But, with everything being virtual right now, we've kind of leveled the playing field on that. Just like
Yeah.
volunteer at these conventions, make yourself known, be helpful. And, honestly, like that gets you a long way. Like, if, you do a really great job running some games at a convention, like, you might
Yeah.
think, oh man, I was just a small fish in the pond. But, like, as an organizer of these conventions, like, we remember you. Like,
Yeah.
people come and they're like, man, that I'm just gonna pick one of our random Baldwin games. Yeah, that Amy Jordan. I
Yeah.
had so much fun at her table. When is she playing another game? And you're just
Right.
like,
Yeah.
then we're all like, okay, Amy's good. Maybe we talk to Amy about writing some Moonshays or something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, yeah. But
That's absolutely how it happens. And I think these days there isn't just one way
mhm,
that you can get noticed. And also, the game is not simply one of like, it used to be all you could do was write for Dungeon or Dragon magazine, and that was kind of the only thing you could sort of figure out. And now there are a lot of different ways. You don't have to be in a hard, as cool as it is to be in a hardback book, that does not have to be your goal. Your goal can simply be to reach an audience with your work and to feel good about your work. And there are a number of ways you can do that, right? You can kickstart, you can work with different partners, third party, right? You could write for Kobold Press. There are lots of ways to get things. And what I would say is that's an important part of the equation, is thinking about what your goal is,
mhm,
because it's really easy to chase something that may not actually make you happy.
right.
Um,
No, that's important too.
because money is really hard to come by in this industry.
Yes.
There are bags of it in some places and nothing in other areas. And so you can work really, really hard and at the end of it have very, very little to show for it.
Mhm.
And so if that's important to you, if it's necessary, if you're planning on making it your job, then that's a whole other skill set that's very difficult, which is to find how to make it sustainable, like truly sustainable, right? Because currently the plan that a lot of role-playing game old folks use is they write for nothing, they
Don't
reach
do that. Don't.
retirement age, and they do a GoFundMe to pay for the kidney transplant or whatever comes their way. And I'm being serious, right? Like that's
Yeah.
very
No.
sad. But when you don't make enough money to cover your health care and to have a retirement plan, that's what's going to happen in the end. And I don't want that future for anybody, right? So
Right.
so I don't want to make it look like. But also things are changing. We are seeing right now good people that have established themselves as being good to each other,
Mhm.
easy to work with, talented at writing. Those people are now getting hired into a new breed of companies that are coming up, right? Whether it's 2C Gaming or it's MCDM. There's some outfits now that are showing up and they're hiring the Sean Merwins and the Celeste Conowiches and the James Intercassos, and they're paying them good money because they know how to turn good talent into success,
Mhm.
right? And that's starting to happen
And
more.
Sly Flourish brings up a point here that MT Black has a really good book on this topic. This topic being, how to make money or avoid not making money. I guess would be actually more realistic for what that is. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and then yeah, no, Sean Merwin and Celeste recently talked with Jeff Stevens about their jump to making this their full time career because yeah, it is kind of terrifying and there's no guarantee. Um, and
Absolutely.
I don't know
And so
that
you have.
I don't know that I could make the leap.
Well, I know I can't. I mean, I'm lucky in that I have a day job that is a very good day job, and what that means is that trying to pay off my mortgage with the hobby is a very difficult challenge.
Mhm.
So I'm lucky in that respect. But I have two kids. My kids are about to go to college.
And
I
that's
have a
not cheap
wife.
either.
We both work, and none of that is cheap. And so, you just have to. I have to accept that what it is, right? That I balance the rigor of my day job with the creativity of my hobby job, and I do it when I can, after the parenting's done, after making the meal, after all that stuff, right? Like those things have to come first.
Sometimes end up staying awake until the wee hours of the morning, but for the love of the
There's
game.
a lot of that.
Yeah. I've never stayed up all night writing.
No, no, not at all. There are some things that, yeah, sometimes there's that you make yourself work at, like, say, midnight. This is what happens to me a lot. Is I will say I'm gonna write, and I'll tell my family I'm gonna write, and then something fun happens. Like right now, it's snowing outside, so it'll be like, hey, let's play snow in the snow, and then there'll be some chore, and then something, and then I'll decide I'm cooking dinner tonight, and then we want to watch a TV show together, and then everybody goes to bed, and it's now midnight, and I can finally work. And around 1:30, I hit this writing spurt where it all comes out, and
Yeah,
I
you're a
go
bit
till
of a
who
night
knows how
owl.
long.
My
Yeah.
most
The problem with
productive
that is
hours are 11 to 3 a.m.
oh yeah, it's very productive, but it's also terrible to not get enough sleep. So you have to balance that out. So.
Yeah. Uh, let's see. Got us a couple of comments here then. Let's see. Remember Teos put together that collaboration document, which I have heard has been very helpful to many. The
We're talking
collaboration.
about the code of conduct.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I was like collaboration document. I know the code of conduct. It actually has been super helpful. It was also, I'm gonna air quote this, controversial a fair bit.
Well, you know what it is that when you write something that is about diversity, equality, or anything good like that, you're going to draw some fire. And I'm lucky that I don't care. So people can bring it and write their terrible 1 star
Well, you've got your army of
comments.
flumps to protect you from all that negativity.
Yeah, they tentacly pet me later and make me feel happy, and it's all better. But no, it's fine. I'm glad to soak up some rage from some of
Mm-hmm.
those people if that's what they feel. My true perspective is that a lot of those people just need to go through a voyage of learning,
Mm-hmm.
and over time they will get better. I hope for them, for their benefit as well, right? I want them to reach a better place in their evolutions. We all evolve as we grow. But yeah, I get some angry comments on that product, that I'm ruining the hobby by saying that we have to listen to one another and have a code of conduct for a project and not hit on each other or be terrible to each other.
Just
So
be
be it.
professional with one another.
Hmm.
Heaven forbid that when you're working, you work professionally.
Right, right.
Um, yeah. So another question comes in. Cloud Giant's bargain. Did you know ahead of time that it was going to be a big worldwide movie theater event? And do you know if WotC or PAX is ever going to do something like it again? And well, we got a three-part question. And like, what was the inside view on how successful that was?
That's a great question. So I don't know how successful anybody there thinks it was. I would suspect that they think it is, in that it created, for the time that we were in then, it created a good amount of buzz, and it was such a bizarre thing, right? Like, go watch a live play game that is happening at PAX in a movie theater.
I was just
And
mad
people
because it was
did that.
Dragon Con weekend.
Yeah, they were at the same time that year. Um, and then you get an adventure for free. Now, there were some problems, like some movie theaters didn't get their adventures, and so you had to go later. In fact, I got my copy by going to a theater and saying, do you have a whole bunch of copies, and can I get one because my name's actually there? And they're like, sure, take two. Um, but later I got copies. Uh, so the inside baseball of that was that, or the behind the scenes secret is that Wizards is a busy company, and for those of you who work at like a corporation, you probably know what it's like when Sue thinks the plan is A and Bob thinks it's B and Enrique thinks it's a totally different thing, and then they eventually have a meeting and it becomes a whole new thing or an amalgam of those ideas. And that happens at Wizards of the Coast all the time because they're a company like any other company. So on this project, I was told I was writing a convention PAX adventure. So I started working on that, and I sent a outline for it, and they said, "Yeah, this looks great." And then they started saying things back to me that I was like, "This doesn't jive," because I was saying like, "Well, it'll be like lots of people playing at PAX, right? This adventure." And it turned out that it was this movie thing, and they finally told me that it was this movie thing. And I'm like, "Oh, well, none of my outline works then." And they're like, "Well, I guess not." So that happens at projects sometimes, right? So then I was like, okay, well, I'll just start all over again. and it was one of the fastest things I've written, and because of that, maybe one of the better things I've written, because I really just focused on the experience. And at that point, when I knew it was a movie theater thing, I realized, well, the other thing is I was told that it had to be Cloud Giants, which is high level, but it's for people who might watch Acquisitions Incorporated, which could be new. So I wrote what I think is one of the it's a middle level. It's like 6 to 9 or something like that level.
Yeah,
I think
it was weird because it spanned two organized play tiers, and then it became organized play legal, and then there was a lot of
yeah.
I think it was 6 to 8 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And for that band, I think it's one of the new DM friendliest things you can find. And I did that by adding a bunch of sidebars. I got permission to add all these sidebars that sort of walk you through it. And I work with Scott Fitzgerald Gray, the amazing editor that everything he touches is better. He helped with that too. And so I think we made it a very friendly thing. And I think it was a very good success. I think it's a very good adventure. I'm very happy with it. I think it was a good event. Would they do it again? I don't know. I think there are a lot more ways now where they can get things visible, but it's always the difficulty for Wizards or any other RPG company to marry that vision with the available technologies, right? The streaming is I think a bit better audience now, but how do you make, like if we look at the Stranger Things video that came out recently, that wasn't as big as it could have been.
No, I mean, which was kind of weird considering like there was a lot of promotion of it in the traditional D&D channels, but like if you're not in those, you didn't know. Like it wasn't really like the Stranger Things communities weren't really talking about it, which seemed like the obvious place where they should have been targeting.
Yeah.
But
and that's the challenge.
But
so
I haven't
all
done,
these things are hard that way. Yeah.
I'm not in their marketing department, so.
But I mean, like maybe have it on Netflix. I don't know, just talking, right? Just like if that thing blew up on, if you saw that on Netflix, that you could watch them play D&D, or you're looking through trailers and more or whatever, and you find that, like, how awesome would that be?
Oh, I would watch the shit out of it.
Yeah,
like
my guess
a
is
nicely done
yeah
D&D, like Will Wheaton's tabletop series, but like D&D and just put it on Netflix.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm feeling like I would watch that when I don't watch people on Twitch, but I feel like I would.
Well, we're always at a point in time, and it's hard to predict what's coming next, right? And I think there will be some changing of the format because you're right. It is only but so fun to watch people play D&D in a typical format, and so how do you make that really work? It's hard.
It is, but I think there's definitely like a lot of the games out there, they're streamed and everything, but they're not like, they don't really explain the concept of the game very well to people who don't understand it. So I think there's a market for something like I mean, I'm just gonna go back to this, like the tabletop series he does, because they explain all of the games, and that gets you excited about it. You can see how excited they are about the mechanics, and you're like, man, I really want to play that Star Trek Catan.
Yeah, they sold those games, right? And then they had the relationship with Target so that they'd have them on, and it would just sell off the shelves and Target whatever game they did back then. And so that's the challenge, right? Is always to figure out.
They really
and
actually
that's
kind
what I
of
think
launched the Target board game market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also led to the Target then creating the Target specific board games, right? That now you can get the exclusive Target stuff, like came out of that idea of like there's an audience that'll follow this. And I think at the end of the day, you want to have a good thought of your vision of what you're trying to do and then how that comes together. And I think the Stranger Things video is a good example of those things not coming together. And it was fun. I watched it. But it was not amazing. That was entertaining. And it wasn't positioned to where both Wizards and Netflix and Stranger Things could really benefit from that event, right?
It's always a little cool, though, to see, like, the celebrities you love doing the thing that you love. And you're like, it's not a great game, but, like, they're playing D&D and I love it. This is my thing.
Oh, yeah. It's a positive. But, I mean, there's another... if you think of, like, say, the work, the polish they put into, if you've ever watched one of those behind-the-scenes videos that they do for, like, the filming of Stranger Things or any of that, like, there is the capability to make that a truly amazing experience. And you have to understand the role-playing game side of it and know how to put it together. You have to educate the players because the players were clearly very new. which I thought was a negative. I don't want to overanalyze Stranger Things, but like they play people who know the game, and I think it would have been better had they maybe played a bit more earlier with the same characters and then played this adventure. Or like you said, make it about learning the game and then be teaching, really truly
Yeah,
teaching.
or if they didn't want to do that, if you're going to be doing like a production of something, like take a step back and like as an organizer, I really cannot overemphasize the importance of a session 0. And yeah,
Yeah, it's one of the things for Stranger Things is when not to talk over your other players, because there was a lot of that in that video, and I actually think Perkins sometimes has the face of someone who was not super excited about the game.
it's got to be hard for Perkins as a DM on some of those streams when like he doesn't actually know the people very well, but like knows of them and everything, and knows that like the focus is kind of supposed to be on them, but also wants to tell them just to like, hey, can you zip it for a minute?
Yeah. How about we let the other person shine for a bit? Yeah.
I don't know that I would want to be a DM for celebrities. I don't know though. Some of them are just as down to earth as regular people, and I do love DMing for people who've never played before, like beginners. It's kind of one of my passions and what I'm kind of advertising myself on like start playing games and professional DMing things as. And I think there's a huge market for that too. And but like someone that I'd be afraid to be like, can you shush for a second?
Someone mentioned the UK games in chat, and there have been, I think some of the ones that work best are those where they're all comedians and improv type people, because they understand that whole pass the mic, share the spotlight, feed off of it, and really what it is they're audience focused already.
I think the one in the UK was like, it was like a charitable thing, maybe benefiting the Red Nose or something. I can't. I vaguely remember that one being publicized to that celebrity game, but again, super under the radar. Lots of opportunities that could have been.
Celebrities, they want to know how to look decent on these things too, right? Like that's their, they want to help out a cause and not look like morons. That's what they're looking for.
You know what I'm hearing, Teos, is a job opportunity for you to coach these celebrities on how to play D&D so they can look good on camera.
Yeah,
we're gonna run this series of Teos Session Zeros.
I will. If you are a famous person watching this video, I will indeed be your life coach for D&D.
We're just gonna have to send it to. I don't know. Matthew Lillard is the most approachable of them all, and be like, share the news. Teos will session 0 you.
Well, I used to have a job in college where I worked with a lot of sort of celebrity types and politicians and things like that. So we had a lot of speakers and things like that I'd work for, and I'd set up their audio and visual setup for whatever event was going on. And that's the thing I find is that they really are like anyone else, but they're thrust into this place, right, where this public eye, and they really just want the same thing we want. They just operate it sometimes for brief periods of time. They operate on a much grander scale, but it's otherwise the same.
They're just humans.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping they're all just humans. No secret lizard folk.
Yeah, it's possible. Well, I did briefly meet Jane Goodall once, and that was fun. Like, she was a very different human, wonderfully so. But she was just like, just sitting in an elevator with 3 people who were going crazy trying to figure out how to go where they needed to go to get to the green room. And she's just like sitting with her legs folded in sort of yoga pose style and just kind of meditating, totally chill. And while these 3 people her handlers just went crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I can take you to the green room. Nice to meet you, Jane Goodall. Nice to meet you. It was very fun.
That's so cool. So, you've been doing all these really cool projects, and so I don't want to be like, what do you have coming up next? Because I know how NDAs work. But outside of what you have actually coming up, like, what would be something else that you would want to do? Maybe something different than what you've done, but like another Cloud Giants bargain type thing, or another Acquisitions Inc. or
Yeah, I can talk to you about one thing that's coming up that has been awesome, and it's relevant to what we're talking about, which is working with MCDM,
yes.
because that's public and not out yet. So they had this, as all their Kickstarters are, super successful Kickstarter for their second book. And they had strongholds and followers and the kingdoms and warfare that give you this whole additional side you can take to your D&D game about how you're running a kingdom and fighting wars with the kingdom that you have. And so I got to write part 2. The adventure there's a part 1 adventure that's in their first book, and their second book has another adventure, and I got to write that one. I got to see how good James Hake was, because he wrote the first one and it's so good, and I was like, oh, that's kind of intimidating. But anyway, I wrote it. I think it's really good. I think it's really fun, and I think people really like it. And what I also love is I'm of the opinion to keep things simple, and I wasn't sure I was actually going to love the MCDM system, but it works really well. It has a neat way of allowing you to play D&D so it feels like you're just playing D&D, but you also have this layer of what your kingdom is doing that's really neat. And so the adventure walks you through doing that. It lets you use those actual rules that are in the book. And I think people are going to enjoy that. I think it's going to be really cool for anybody who wants to do kingdoms and one kingdom against another.
Yeah, I think that's really something fun. I'm probably going to have to pick up, because I'm done some of the Border Kingdom stuff, and I think that's like a perfect opportunity for that, because that's literally the lore of that the kingdoms are constantly feuding. And so, like, how do you really work that into your game? Well, with the MCDM stuff. So
I'm excited about that, and seeing their magazine Arcadia, that is beautiful. So I now want to write for that.
And they brought Intricasso on for that, so like, it's got the stamp of approval.
They are one of these companies I'm talking about that just is operating a completely different way. They have figured out the secret sauce of how to launch enormous Kickstarters, and then they're just good people about it to each other. So they are paying each other well, and they're good to each other, and it's wonderful. If you can work for MCDM, you want to. They are great. But what else? I'm going to be doing some more work with Dwarven Forge. That's been announced, but what is unclear yet? I think we're still scheming.
It's going to be an adventure.
It should be, probably. I do like doing other things. Like I wrote, the franchise rules for Acquisitions Incorporated. So I do like creating systems and things like that. I do shy away from that kind of work, because what's tough is if a typical RPG company hires you to say create a monster or create a subclass, that's very few words and a lot of work. And so I tend to say no to those kinds of jobs because they often pay so poorly, which is a thing I think creators need to think about when they're hiring people. Is like, word count is not, for some things it doesn't work. Adventures, it works okay, but for other things,
I think that the word count model is going to have to be something that eventually the tabletop role-playing community gets away from as far as the pay structure, because like you're saying, it's not a shoe that fits for all situations. And it really kind of like almost kind of encourages people to write more useless words, which isn't really something, quality over quantity. I'd rather have a shorter book that really just like explains it all really well than one that uses this unnecessarily long and complicated language, and then like I'm like, I think this contradicts this, but it's hard to tell for sure. And as for question there about mixing the rules into the Borderlands mods, I mean, it's D&D. You can mix and match all the rules you want outside of organized play.
Yeah, you can't do it through the organized play because it's totally wacky rules. But yeah. So other things I would like to do. So I do have 2 big goals for this year. I don't know. I hope I will do them both. It's always hard, all the different plates that are spinning. But a lot of it depends what my day job does with my erratic customers. But the first thing I want to do is, my son and I are finishing up our D&D adventure we wrote together. My son is a freshman in high school. And so we are finishing up this adventure, and I'm going to kickstart it. That'll be super fun. So we'll see how that does. And that'll let me learn about crowdsourcing and be a fun thing for my son. And hopefully,
and you're going to have this little bonding experience. It's
been wonderful to write together. It's been really cool. So
I'm actually so
and so I'm
happy to
already
see so many people doing D&D stuff with their family right now.
yeah, and I'm already planning play tests. I've got a couple play tests that I'm doing. In fact, I might end up play testing it. I might use that as the adventure that I'm going to run for Jasper's Game Day in March. I might do that.
Okay.
So
In
that'd be cool.
March.
Yeah, I think it's early March or something. I don't know. There's a game day somewhere there. I'm on the schedule somewhere.
I know they have one in May. They might have one in March. They have a lot of stuff going on, so it's hard
Yeah,
to
they do. They
keep
do.
track.
Yeah, I think I have a game with them, which is March 3rd, currently planned.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I might do that. So that could be a sneak peek for folks who are interested in it. And then if that goes well, I will do my own Kickstarter for something that I've been working on actually for a couple of years off and on in around all my projects. But the projects keep taking me away from doing my own work. So
Yeah, but
I'm excited for
the
that
projects
someday.
definitely pay. Not that your work won't,
Do.
but
Yeah.
they pay now.
Well, what Mike Shea will tell you is that the money can be a lot better if you own it yourself, though, and that's the important part. Is that if you get 20 cents a word today, which is a good rate that most people should be paying, that's all you're getting. But if you can sell it and then have it on kickstart it, have it on drive-through, have it on your own website, that can be recurring revenue, and that can be far better if you can pull it off.
And, of course, with anything that you've got up and online, you're going to have that long tail of sales that just potentially keep going.
Right.
So,
Right.
Which
Yeah.
is, yeah. And the more things you publish online, the more of that you have. And Mr. Thomas Valley is trying to do his sad puppy dog eyes in chat at Teos right now to get you to run something at GaryCon, which is also in March, the
He's awesome.
25th or something like that.
I think originally that was one of the dates that Jasper's threw my way, but that is actually when my son's birthday is. So I wanted to keep that open. Otherwise, I would.
Yep. Okay. Now you've got it, Thomas. You know when his son's birthday is, so you can plan GaryCon around it next year.
There you go. And then I'm in. It'd be great. I love GaryCon. So.
Yeah. No. And GaryCon is one I haven't done in person yet. I was going to, and then
COVID.
This happened. So, yeah, because like Geneva and I'm in Chicago, it's like not very far at all, and I haven't driven it yet. But if I'm not mistaken, I can go to the Cheese Castle on the way.
What is the Cheese Castle?
What is the Cheese Castle? The Cheese Castle, the Mars Cheese Castle, is just over the state line in Wisconsin from Illinois, and if there's a cheese that you can dream of, they have it. And all the beers to go with it.
I like this. It
and
sounds
everything
like a
else,
joke
everything
you would
else
make
that you
about
need.
Wisconsin, so it's great to hear it's true.
Yeah, and they've got the meats, the cheeses, the beers, the all of it.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah.
We should have a convention at the Cheese Castle.
Thomas, get on it.
CheeseCon.
It's huge. Why not?
Cheese-themed adventures.
Oh. See, Thomas is done. All right.
Done. There we go.
That would actually be, God, that would be so much fun. We can write these cheese-themed adventures. We can have little like mouse guard things.
You could have rats in a basement and not feel bad about it.
No.
You could be the rats, and you got to go to the basement and steal the cheese.
No, I have a rat in the walls of my condo, and I don't want to think about rats at all.
Yeah.
The other perk of living in Chicago.
Rats plague my chickens. That's the perk of living in Portland.
Well, he's in the wall between my condo and someone else's, so like half the time like he's bothering me, and half the time he's bothering them. So it's like we've got shared custody of the rat.
And
nobody really wants it.
You just hope you want it to go away, but not die in the wall. So that's the real key.
Well, one did die, and one got caught in the trap that was in mine and did die there. And it was so hot. I'm short, and I couldn't reach it to get it down. No, I'm not afraid of rats. They're just, disgusting plague carriers.
Yeah. Uh,
I mean, nobody really wants a rat in their house. Unless
no,
you've
it's true.
got it at the pet store, in which case, um, that's great. It probably has its shots.
we have rats outside that plague the chickens, and then indoors we get the little mice, which are always super cute, like just totally cute little mice, and we'll do live traps for those. And the problem is you don't catch them very often, so you're hoping you hear them so that you can get to the trap and then drive them somewhere and dump them out, because otherwise you get a dead mouse in there and it's really sad because they look so cute.
Yeah, yeah. No, that is the one thing too. Like, I wish that they could like trap them and like take them on the other side of the river from me and let them go.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to do.
Yeah. Um, well, obviously we digress. So we're gonna write a rat adventure. Um,
Yeah,
but
that's for sure.
um,
Big
but
goal.
but yeah. So there is a switching back to organized play. There's a lot of organized play happening online right now. Virtual conventions. As a matter of fact, Wizards of the Coast has teamed up with Baldwin Games to do a monthly event, and on
Yeah.
top of that, there's every single other convention that exists trying to do their virtual events. So, are you doing any organized play stuff now?
So I'm doing mostly work behind the scenes, a little bit of running. So that what I've done, I ran a couple of adventures for some of the early events, like the D&D.
Live
Can't
and
remember what.
celebration?
Yes, D&D Live and D&D Celebration. Thank you.
I got you.
And what was really fun is I did them in Spanish.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and that
You've
was
been a
really
big
cool.
push on getting the Spanish and Portuguese tables.
I've been trying because I know, having grown up in Colombia, that there is, there is a market for there are big pools of players and communities, and it can be harder for them to find each other and also to find any central link to like Wizards and how this is happening. So I think that's really cool. What's hard is that our economies are very different. And so if you take anything that we charge for a table, for a seat at a table, you can multiply it, depending on the country, by 3 or 4, and that's what the price feels like to them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you pay $15 for a game and it's actually 60, I think we'd all go, that's a little steep. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so
I mean,
when you're
I might for like a game that's like, one of those mega marathon things.
yeah, right. It would have to be something super special, but just playing a 4-hour AL adventure for $70-$60 is hard. So we have to keep experimenting, and it's something we've talked about with Wizards and with Baldwin Games. How can we find ways to make this work? So we're still trying to explore that.
Yeah, and I think we're playing with making the Spanish language games like a fraction, and the
Yeah.
Portuguese ones too, like a fraction of the price for Winter Fantasy, to see how that goes. So
Yeah.
I am excited to see a lot more of the DMs joining and chatting in Portuguese, which I can't understand.
Nope.
I
understand
feel
half
like
of
I
it.
almost can, but then the Spanish channel, I can understand a decent amount of it. I've actually replied to a couple of questions in there, and I'm like always apologizing, like my Spanish is bad. I'm sorry.
I love it when you post there. It's great.
Well, to which like half of them are like, I speak English, but then I'm like, but does everyone in this channel?
Yep.
I don't want to.
Most players do that are playing D&D because the rules are in English, which also goes back to the affordability. So you generally have people who are bilingual who are playing D&D because you can't afford to buy the D&D reprinted rules because they're sold from Spain. So you have to pay not only the $75
But the
that
VAT.
they charge for a book there, but another $75 for shipping. So you're paying $150 for
Yeah.
a player's handbook.
And then the VAT taxes on top of that, because they're shipping it out of Europe, and it's just, oh, yeah. As Thomas says, Thomas's son lives in San Jose, Costa Rica, and there's no
Awesome.
fewer than 10 game stores in their downtown area, and they're definitely in demand.
Yeah.
So, but like, yeah, I'm super excited to see more games being offered in, not just Spanish and Portuguese, but even more languages, and D&D really becoming this global thing where we're all doing it together. Like
Yeah,
obviously
right.
we've been doing it around the world, but like I've
Yeah.
been running tables for people um because I you know, we run them at all kinds of weird hours now. People in
Yeah.
like Norway and Russia
Yeah.
and the Pacific Islands and
Yeah.
you know, Southeast Asia. It's just like, you know, all over the world, and it's just like so nice. Um, it's not necessarily as nice for my players because I'm finding that they have struggle understanding one another's accents, but that is
Yeah,
fortunately
sure.
something that I have a good ear for as long as they are actually speaking English.
Yes. Well, and that's a fun. I used to travel a lot for my work in previous years,
Mhm.
and so I've played D&D games, organized play games in the Netherlands, in Australia, in Belgium, Canada, all over, and you find that yeah, if you can just there's a desire to come together and do that, and a desire to be able to play through all of the opportunities that exist, right? So something like Rime of the Frost Maiden comes out, like there is excitement to play that, and they may not be able to afford the adventure, but there's an excitement to be connected and be part of that community and to be recognized by Wizards or
Mhm.
Baldman or any other entity like that. So I think we'll see more and more international growth. What's tough is companies need to make some money to make that all worthwhile,
Mhm.
and finding the how it works, right? So I've heard about things how, like in Japan, uh, when you make a game or an adventure look like a comic book, it can be hugely successful, right? And so finding a different format might be necessary, or some other way. Having live streams when they're packaged a particular way can be hugely popular and can get lots of people playing a game. And so it requires experimentation and tweaking to see what the format is and how to do it. But I think most companies could probably do a good job of I think if we translated the basic rules for D&D, for example,
Yeah, and
and had an
I know
accompanying how to play adventure, I think that would be huge in
the
any
basic
language.
rules are available in several languages. I think 5 or 6 at least already, but you know, that does only get you so far.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of room left to get those officially translated into the other hundreds of languages.
Yeah,
Um,
and easily accessible, right? Because you can't go if you don't speak English and you go to the Wizards of the Coast website. What are you going to do? You can translate it through Google Translate, but it's not there for you, and it's not written to you, right?
mhm.
And it could be. It could really be, find a game in another country and really talk to me about what I can do. How can I end up finding a game in Spanish on Walden Games, or how can I find a book that's like, even you can't go to the Wizards site and learn what languages the books are available in,
No, you have to
right?
find them directly through the partner who is publishing them in
Mm-hmm.
that language in that country.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's tough if you speak that language but you're not in that country, which is what happens with most of the Spanish-speaking world is not inside of Spain. Shockingly,
Yeah,
no.
yeah, it's
And
weird how
so
that works.
there is no link to Edge Entertainment, which is the only company doing the translation and
Hmm.
selling in Spain. So that's a thing that needs some work, and who knows? Maybe Wizards knows that and is going to work a different translating deal, or maybe because they did their translations through Gale Force 9 and Gale Force 9 through specific partners in each country, and that's a system that works great in countries like Japan, where you primarily, if you're Japanese, you probably can buy it there and it's all good.
Japan's
But
also a very
it's
small, like, landmass. So,
yes,
you know, if you've only got it through one publisher, their distribution is easy to get it to, you know,
yeah,
everyone there who speaks Japanese.
yeah,
Versus, like you're saying, especially with Spanish language countries, they're like, if you want to
yeah.
distribute that to all of the countries, that is a massive distribution network.
And this is no sample, but when I bought I worked in Japan for a week, and when I went to a gaming store and I bought the 3 books in Japanese, and at the game store were 2 tables. There were 3 players, 3 tables playing games. One of them, I don't know what it was. It was something unrecognizable. One was D&D in English, and one was D&D in Japanese. Right, so
Yeah. So,
yeah,
you know,
it works there. Yeah,
the world wants D&D.
it does. It
And
does.
I think that's, you know, probably more so now than ever, with everyone being so disconnected due to the pandemic and trying to get social interaction, when gaming online is one of the best ways to do that right now, to connect with your friends, to connect with new friends. And I think that's going to continue to be prevalent and a desire, and something we should push towards. So I look forward to seeing more people like you who are taking that step to
Mm-hmm.
get it in Spanish or French or German or
Yeah.
Italian. Although
Yeah.
I hear the Italian community is pretty large already too, and I know there are Italian translations. So
And that tells you, right? So there's that stat that came out at one point that was kind of mind blowing, that at one point, the number of Italians on Roll20 was bigger than anywhere else,
yeah,
right? And so, first, you kind of have to wrestle with there are that many role players in Italy that when COVID hit, they all found Roll20 and were running games. Like that's how many people are out there. Like that's that how huge that market can be if we can reach it.
hmm
So it's like, well, how do we reach it, right? That's what needs to happen is learning
and I think
how you can reach that
a lot of the
market.
companies are the gaming companies are starting to realize that. I know Wizards specifically has partnered with several events in Europe. I know they did
Hmm.
what is it, LucaCon in
Yeah,
Italy, which apparently, as I've learned, they pretty much take over an entire town and do
yeah, one of the
gaming.
biggest multi-game conventions in the world. Yeah,
Yeah, they played D&D in a catacombs. I was like, mind blown.
yeah,
That's a little creepy, but also very cool.
yeah,
So doing more like that, doing more outreach is, yeah, and spreading more organized play along with
yeah,
that, which um, doing that in various languages has its difficulties, but
yeah. But we can get there, right? And a lot of it is, and this is something I've tried to do on mine with the Spanish side, is I am not the Spanish D&D scene, right? I run most of my games in English with people that live in my community. I used to play always in Spanish, but really I had not run a game in like 20 years in Spanish, and so it was really fun to do it again. But I'm not the Spanish community, and so more what I'm trying to do is to find ways that we can empower the Spanish language community to get together and do things and be part of that community, that they
mm-hmm,
are self-driving and that works for them. And same thing for any other language, right? For Portuguese, for Italian. I mean, we have all these Italian players, and we're not doing anything to facilitate it, other than D&D Beyond has an Italian translation, which maybe works, maybe doesn't. I have no idea, right? But
I
we're
don't
not.
know.
It's not a focus. And when that D&D job came out for being the, I forget what it was, but it's sort of like the director of Dungeons and Dragons essentially job that I think is still on their website. I thought, if I were to apply for that job, the biggest thing I would do is I would say international, right? We're going to develop a plan that in 5 years we have those communities. And I still think whoever takes that job should do that. Like,
Oh,
give
absolutely.
yourself 5 years to be present in all those places with those communities growing and being a part
hmm
of it, because sales are going to flow for everybody else if that happens.
And all you really need to do is give them the tools to empower them to grow their own communities. And that's actually
Yeah.
kind of one of the
Yeah.
reasons I'm excited that we're getting all these people into the Baldwin Games organization, so they can see what we're doing and take that and copy it and like go and use
Yeah.
use what works of it
Yeah.
from the and take it back to their own communities and be like, okay, we've seen how we do this and we're going to do it, but our twist.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
It's
that's what,
exciting.
yeah. God,
That's
I'm
what I love
excited.
about
I'm
this
really
hobby.
excited.
It's always evolving, always improving.
Yeah. Okay, well, we are coming up to the end of the hour somehow already. And so want to take the opportunity to let you tell everyone where they can find you online. And if you've got any events that you're partaking
Sure.
in coming up soon, love to share those as well, because I'm sure I'm
Yeah.
not the only one excited to speak to you.
If you did not enjoy this time, my name is Mike Shea.
And you can find him at Sly Flourish.
Yeah, he's going to start a blog one of these days. No, but if you do want to find me, as you mentioned, I'm at alphastream.org. I am at alphastream on the Twitters. You can find me on the DMs Guild, and you can find my free work on the Dwarven Forge website and in many other places. So.
Yeah, and as mentioned, you do have links to all of that on your website, which is so organized that all of a sudden I felt really bad about mine.
Well, thank you for the compliment.
I,
Round it
I,
up, but
I haven't updated mine in like 8 months.
I
So
am. That is a thing that yeah, I am an organized human being, and so I do
yeah.
always. Yeah, I can't have a space without periodically
Well, and a
maintaining
lot
and
has
tweaking
happened
it.
in the last 8 months, so I desperately need to update it, and I'm always like, I'm gonna do it later.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, thank you so much, Teos, for being on the show today. It's been an absolute
Oh,
blast, and look forward to hanging out with you again in the future. Maybe finally
always.
getting to play a game at your table. Um, I don't think that I can quite handle a Spanish language game yet. My mom might be able to. She's on almost
Cool.
day 400 of learning Spanish. So, but next week on the show, I'm super excited to have Brittany Hay on, perhaps better known as the FN Dungeon Mom on Twitter, and have a chat with her about all of the exciting projects that she has going on. And then I've finally got my guest list all together and announced for February, but just to run through that again, it's Adam Hancock and then Casper Kirk. I'm so sorry, Casper. Casper Kirkturk, I believe, is how I say that. And then Brendan Lewis, and then we're going to circle back around to Connor Self, who we started pretty early on in the show to catch up on what he has been doing. Um,
It's awesome.
but I am yeah, so super excited again for all of that, and this has been a blast. But that's it for this episode of the Designer's Den. Thanks everyone. However, if you want to hang around later tonight, we're doing the monthly episode of the Baldman HQ, where you can learn more about all of this Baldman game stuff that we've been rattling on about. That's gonna be at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Calendars and times are hard. All
They
right.
are.
Good night,
Well,
everyone. For
yeah.
now.
So everybody, shave your head for that show.
No, just put on a bald cap.
No, you can't have hair. You gotta. You're awesome, Jenny. Thank you.